What is brighter than a Ruby Star Porsche?
The subscribe button when you click it and you subscribe to the Audrain channel.
Do it now. Make it glow. Hello and welcome to our exhibition Colors, the Cars of Summer, presented by Lamborghini Boston here at the Audrain Automobile Museum. For this exhibition highlights video, I'm joined by my friend Antonio Melegre. And this is, again, about color, and color in high-performance cars. Now, it can be argued that a high-performance car doesn't really need a bright or deep or flashy color scheme in order to do its job. Its job is to go fast.
Very true, but having a little bit of color is fun, you know? What's life with no fun? You have to have fun. So these are two good examples of having a lot of fun during the summer.
And these first two examples that we're going to talk about, and actually, if you're clever, you can actually see the third car, but we won't tell you what it is yet. Again, ruining the story, always. What's really interesting about this is that when most people think of Porsche historically, you think of a silver German bullet. And it's very interesting that Porsche these days has come to stand for something very, very different, because they have taken, and frankly a lot of other manufacturers have followed their lead, they've taken the idea of customizing your color choices to an incredible art.
To a very large premium as well.
Well, there's nothing wrong with profit.
No, not at all.
And when profit can serve beauty and aesthetics and individuality, which is harder and harder to find in the automotive space these days, who's harmed?
No, I mean, of course I'm just joking here, but I think Porsche, out of the major super and sports car manufacturers today, probably do color the best. I mean, I don't know if you could argue with Ferrari, but I think in terms of a brand and the way that they've marketed themselves, everybody has to have a paint to sample or a special painted Porsche these days. If you buy a new 992 like these two cars, the first thing that people will say is, oh, what color did you get? And God forbid you ordered it in the stock silver or white. It's like you're looked down upon. But no, I think they've done a really good job of taking color and providing it into the world. I mean, you look at a very close friend of the Audrain, Will Lee, who runs the very popular Instagram page Paint to Sample PTSRS, and he travels the world and he documents special paint to sample cars. He's actually documented both of these and the Gulf colored 992 Sport Classic that we also have in the collection. So I think Porsche is pivoting themselves and really opening new doors into their market to get new people involved in the brand because of their massive color palette.
And it's also quite interesting the way Porsche has been able to combine these custom and special request colors with the addition of a lot of carbon fiber functional elements, so that what might have been slightly extreme on a car that was all body color becomes almost an accent on a very performance-oriented car. And that's also an interesting point as well. The first one we'll talk about is this car behind me, which is Ruby Star, which is a paint to sample, and it's a version of an historic Porsche color. And it's quite interesting for what it is, because you don't really associate tones and shades like this with the Porsche 911.
No, not really, but I mean, you look at like the Porsche, not to directly contradict you, but you look at the Porsche 964, which I think was one of the first 911s to feature this color, a variant of the color which they used to call Ruby Stone. But I think it suits the car well. I think it's obviously, this is a really extreme example, being the RS version with this massive wing and all these ducts and the louvers and everything. But I think the silhouette of the 911 takes well to many different colors. There are certain cars that you see in one color, it doesn't look so good, but if it's in more of a traditional color or a black or a white, it suits the shape better. But
there is a great history to 911s in color. I mean, even a 67, a good friend of mine has a 67 911S, which is plum.
Yeah,
it's an amazing color. It's a wonderful aubergine color. And so, yes, there is a history of color, but when you see an earlier 911 that has less of this other component to the bodywork, the color takes on a totally different characteristic. And it's also quite fascinating because in terms of personalization, this car is a combination of a Sonderwunsch program car with a lot of extra options and details and combinations with the color. And you almost think that, as you said, if you order a Porsche like this in white or silver or even yellow, people say, well, why'd you do that? But on the other hand, it's also very much a statement. So you buy one of these cars for yourself. You don't buy it necessarily for resale, although many people do look at the resaleability of the special order colors, but it's something you have to be very careful of. Buy a car because you relate to the color, not because you think, oh, it's going to be an unusual color so I can get more money for it later. It may or may not work. Now the other car we have here, which you also have seen, actually both of these cars, we have videos on the Audrain Museum Network, on the road, doing what they're intended to do, be driven. And this one is really special as it relates to this institution, and why is that?
So this is painted in Audrain green, which is now a paint to sample color, but this was a very lengthy process that we took to develop this color and get it on the paint to sample palette. And as much as I love the Ruby Star car next to you, I think this Audrain green in the sunlight, and you can see the flake in the paint and the bronze wheels, I mean, it just really works for me. And it's a take on some other classic colors with a new flair to it, but this is just so elegant to me, and it's just so beautiful to see it in the light.
And it's also one of those things that's worth repeating. We talk about this a bit in the driving video of the car, but I think it's worth repeating here. The fact that paint to sample and paint to sample plus is not just a matter of bringing in your Sherwin-Williams paint chip from your local hardware store and saying, here, I'd like my Porsche painted this color. Doesn't quite happen that way.
No. It's a pretty lengthy process, and it's also quite an expensive process as well.
But there's a reason why that's expensive. Yes, Porsche wants to make a profit on it, but what they go through to make this happen.
They actually have to paint a sample car first, and once they've determined that the paint is to their quality, then they'll go ahead and make the customer car. So it's not just, like you said, sending in the paint chip. They really have to go through many leaps and bounds, and that's also why it is so expensive, because they're taking the time to fully inspect it before they even create the car for the customer, which is very cool, honestly. It's amazing.
It makes perfect sense, because they don't want to be exposed to a color that you've made up that might fade in a year or not be able to be matched in case of an accident. And so, obviously that reflects directly on them, and the fact they've charged you a lot of money for this, so you should get something for what you're paying.
And it's also very cool, the new 992.2 911 just got released, and they actually added finally the Audrain green to the paint to sample configurator when you go on Porsche's website, and now you can see it on the 718 Spider RS and some of these other cars. But we posted about it on social media in conjunction with Will Lee's page, and a lot of people tagged the Audrain Instagram, and they said, hey, this would be my dream spec, and it's so cool that you guys have a color. So it's really nice to see people out there that watch these videos and are fans of the Audrain are also a fan of the color that we created, which is nice.
And it's one of those things that obviously you can drive a Porsche all year long, but these particular colors, as you said, really pop in summer sunlight.
They do.
So that's why they are here in this show, Colors the Cars of Summer. And speaking of color schemes that pop in sunlight, let's take a look at this Bugatti Chiron. Now, that is a really interesting car. We've featured it here on the Audrain Museum Network. It's been seen in exhibitions here in the museum before, and it really evokes very strong opinions and emotions.
Yeah.
And I have to say, not simply because I'm that guy who lives in the past with his head stuck in the history books, but I think it pays to look beyond what you think to what may exist. It is quite historical.
It is.
To see 1930s Bugattis painted in black and yellow. It was a very common color combination for a lot of them, especially Type 57s. And the fact that this is a traditional, with the carbon fiber and the Bugatti yellow, traditional Bugatti color scheme, to which has been added the French blue, which is the French racing color. Bugatti was French racing champion, so it's perfectly logical, and I think really makes a striking statement which speaks to the marque history.
100%. And I think a lot of times like you said, it's very polarizing, and that car will often end up on some negative pages online, worst spec to mention one of them. And people will say that it looks like IKEA, which I could see why somebody would say that. But I think it's a better exercise of not judging a book by its cover. It wasn't just a random selection of colors. There was thought that was put into it, and it's a one-of-one color scheme. There's no other Chiron out there that looks like that car. And I think it's good for people to kind of dive more into it and learn more about the history. I mean, ultimately, us as a museum, we get people that walk in the door every day with a massive amount of knowledge on cars, and some that maybe they don't have that knowledge, or they're just beginning to learn about it. And I think that the story behind it is wonderful, just as you said. And that's kind of everything in this room. There's so much more than just what meets the eye with these cars.
Exactly. And for a car like the Chiron, or the Veyron for that matter, which are ultra high performance cars, frankly, you are not going to use the performance that these cars are capable of in just about any situation that a private owner may find.
Yeah.
So why not celebrate the design of the car in the color and in the expression of the car?
100%. And you mentioned the drivability of the Chiron and the Veyron. When the Veyron came out in 2006, it was so ahead of its time because of its high horsepower, high price tag, but also usability. It's one of the easiest cars in that class of car to drive. You've said it yourself. You've driven both of these cars. Mm-hmm. We have videos of the Chiron and some of the Veyrons that we have in the collections. And they set, Bugatti and Volkswagen set the bar so high with those two cars that you're starting to see a lot of catch-up from other manufacturers to make a car that goes that fast, make a car that goes that fast safely, and a car that you could go to the grocery store with. I mean, I don't know if you want to park it. You might be a little worried about getting a shopping cart ding, but that is one of the most technologically advanced platforms of any car. And you mentioned Bugatti's racing history. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're not racing like they did back in the day, but now they're racing to have this high speed record. And the fact that you could potentially, you wouldn't do it on the road, but you could take that car to 260 miles an hour, back down to zero, and then you could drive back home and then drive it the next day. It's pretty remarkable.
Exactly. A land speed record car for the grocery commute. I think that should be their new marketing slogan.
I'm sure they'll get right on that, Tom.
They will indeed. So I think that these two Porsches and that Bugatti are great examples of cars that just don't fulfill their intended function, but do it with a great deal of style and panache, and also gives us a little more eye fun, which is so distinct for the summertime. Things don't have to be gray and silver and black for the summer. We've got bright, vibrant colors, the beach, the sky, the flowers, the grass. Why not enjoy it?
100%. I mean, I fully agree. I mean, I think that I like colorful vehicles. I'm very fond of my Mini Cooper, which is Minnie calls it volcanic orange, but it's like a mango-ish type. And you know, I'll often be driving that down the road, and every car will be silver, black, white, gray, or I'll park it in a parking lot. I never have to worry about where I put it because I just look around. Oh, it's right over there. You know, the bright colored car. And you know, in some other videos, you've mentioned colors of the past, and it is nice to see that these manufacturers are really starting to celebrate color maybe than they did 10 or 15 years ago, and there's more color on the road. It just makes it better.
And hopefully that's a trend that will continue into the near and long-term future. So thanks for joining us here in this exhibition highlights video in our exhibition Colors, the Cars of Summer. And we hope to welcome you here in the gallery on Bellevue Avenue, or here on the Audrain Museum Network, or on the Bloomberg Connect app. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.